And welcome back to another episode of the Heroic Nation podcast. I'm Anthony, and as always, you're listening to the Heroic Nation podcast, the most epic, awesome, best podcast in the history of podcasts. It is so good that I really only have to put out like one every 6 months, and otherwise, like I would just take over, and it just wouldn't be fair to dudes like Joe Rogan. It just wouldn't be. I mean, I'm just trying to be fair. So you're welcome. For not taking over the podcast space, everyone, because I could, but I'm choosing not to. So you're welcome, Andy Stumpf. You too. Anyway, all right. So great show today, but first I want to talk about a couple of things. One, I am taking one-on-one clients. So if you are interested in improving your physical health, mental health, and performance as it relates to the job or anything else, I got you covered. So you can put in an application. You can email me direct, Anthony at heroicindustrieshq.com, and we can discuss what you're looking for. I don't have many openings. I don't take many slots, but I do have a couple open right now. So there you go. And then number two is some social media posts that I cannot believe. Some of this stuff is controversial because like I was on Kenny's podcast, the Beyond the Barrel podcast, for like the, I don't know, third or fourth time, something like that. Kenny's awesome. If you don't listen to Beyond the Barrel, he actually has a real podcast, and you should listen to it. It's very good. It's very good. And Kenny's been on some amazing podcasts. He's been on the Wild Chaos, as well as, you know, a lot of other like seriously legit podcasts, not like this one. But anyway, so like I was on that, and we had a really good conversation about a lot of different things, and a couple of points that I made specifically is one, that I think athletes make the best cops, and I stand by that 100% because I think athletes make the best fill in the blank job of basically anything, for numerous different reasons. But apparently, people got a lot of feelings hurt about that, and I really don't understand why. You know, I really don't understand why at all. If you would have said, "Hey, I think college makes the best cops," people wouldn't have got butt hurt. I think that the military creates the best cops. People wouldn't have got all their feelings bent out of shape. But all of a sudden, you say athletes, and it's like, "Whoa, no, wait a minute, how can that be?" And it's like that, dude. This is not a controversial thing. Like the best cops I've worked with are athletes, whether they've been to college or the military. Their background always has sports in it, because one doesn't make you good, but two, that usually makes you pretty good. So anyway, that was controversial. And then what was the other one? Oh, violence. I said cops need to be aggressive as a default. You know, Jocko's like default aggressive. I totally agree with that. And they need to understand how to speak in terms of violence and know how to use violence within the context of morals, laws, and policy. And apparently that was too hardcore for people. And it was like, what do you think we do out here? What do you think we do? You know, we deal with violent situations, even if it doesn't result in physical violence, like the posturing, the whole use of force continuum. You know, if you remember that was all based on violence. And our use of force policies today are predicated on violence. I hate to break it to you, but this is the nature of the job. It is the definition of use of force, and it is the thing that is the most dangerous and litigated and all that, right? You know, so like it's just. You can't argue these points. I don't understand what people are like. They're splitting hairs with a lot of semantics and definitions of things. So it's, I don't know. You'll have to go check them out if you have time. So anyway, social media is funny and obnoxious all at the same time. My guest today is a Marine Corps veteran, former firefighter, and a man who's spent the better part of his life coaching anyone from college and professional athletes to dudes on special forces, soft guys, SEAL team guys, SWAT team guys, firefighters, first responders, and any man who wants to not be soft physically and mentally. Like, this is the guy that's going to take you there. He's the founder of High Risk Fitness and the man behind the Operation Human Weapon. He also just opened a peptide company. This is very important. So if you go to VersaBio.com and use launch10, that is a code that will get you 10% off. So anything that we talked about today, because we do get deep into the weeds with a lot of peptides, information on that, healing, recovery, like all kinds of stuff with it. Go to his website. Great products, great catalog. Use Launch 10 and get 10% off. With that said, welcome Randy Hill.
I don't know what it is, man. It's just like when I have the whole like studio setup, it's just like it's a cave, and I feel like I don't know. It's a psychological thing or something.
Do you get where it's like you feel like you're like this like a spotlight's in your face, you can't see anything beyond it? Like do you feel like that?
Like kind of like tunnel vision-y.
Kind of. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't know, dude. I'm fucking autistic or something. But I'm just like very affected by stuff like that. Like when I lived in Kentucky, I couldn't do it. Like there's no sun. Like there's always cloud cover. It's raining all the time, and it made me like not depressed, like sad depressed. But I just had like no drive. Like I just felt like, ugh, like, and even when it's like that here, like if it's overcast, I don't know what it is, man. It just completely takes all of like the life force out of me. I need sunshine. That's how I grew up, and I don't know, man. It's weird. I'm very affected by stuff like that.
It's like Superman.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's like my yeah kryptonite. But so, anyways, what's going on, dude? How are you? How's your arm?
My arm is, I don't know, it's like it's getting better, but like I still get this like I don't know if you can see, but like that's the amount of extension that I have there. I can't extend my finger any more than that.
Oh shit.
And if I go wrist extension, like I can't do it. It's just like dead. So doctor said I just got to let the nerve calm down, and it might take a while. I was like, well, that would have been good to know before surgery because I might not have had the surgery. So because they
Well,
were
in the end, it'll be a positive outcome. I mean, yeah, the recovery's gonna suck, but you know,
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's still like, will the pain in that radial tunnel, will that go away? Like, I don't know. I guess time will tell. So
yeah.
I'm trying to follow the rules, because I'm still on a 5 pound weight restriction. So I can't technically do anything with that. But I went for my recheck and I was like, hey, well, I can start doing push-ups and stuff, right? They were like, no. And they were like dumbfounded. I was like, why can't I do push-ups? They said, you're on a 5 pound limit. I said, that's zero
Mhm.
weight. I said, it's zero. And they were like, no, that's like 200. I was like,
Yeah.
says you. So
Well, maybe you'll probably be able to start doing them like on your fists before you do that, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But either way, like I'm getting a little antsy to go back to work, but because I get a
Right.
bunch of, well, I mean, I'm sure you know how it is. Like I just get a bunch of shit from dudes like still milking this injury, and it's
Yeah,
like
of course.
no.
Are you
But
right-handed?
yeah,
Fuck.
yeah, and it really sucks. But
Yeah, I'm lucky, man. I haven't, knock on wood, have any like major orthopedic problems. I got my knees, but I never got operations on them. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. That blows, dude. I was pretty close to surgery for my hamstring when I tore it at a powerlifting meet a few years ago, but I was able to avoid it. I did the whole BPC and TB 500 thing, and but they said it was close. It was a pretty gnarly one. So
yeah, what would they have to do? Just go reattach it? Like it was it a full
yeah,
emulsion?
yeah, it wasn't full. I guess you said it was like right on the verge or something like that. It was a bad situation, dude. So, they called me out for it was my second attempt on squat. It was 550. And so I warm up and everything, and you time it right. And then I go out there and I'm feeling pretty good. And right as I'm about to get under the bar, they're like, oh, actually, we messed the order up. You got to go back, backstage or whatever. And then it was like 15 minutes before they called me up again. Well, I didn't know when it was going to be. So I'm sitting back there sitting in a chair. So 15 minutes of sitting in a chair, cold, cold, totally cold. And then I go and I put 550 on my back and they get to the bottom and I just hear a tear and I was like,
Oh,
so bummer, but it healed fast, man. I was back to squatting normal in like 8 weeks, I think.
oh wow.
So yeah, I thought it was gonna take me out for a long time, but dude, those the healing peptides, man, and I was a little bit younger then too, but
Yeah.
yeah, I healed pretty quick, so I was lucky.
Well, let's actually start there. Let's just start there. Talk to me about peptides. I think that especially within like the first responder space, like Like, we're such idiots, such meatheads that it's like, oh yeah, well peptides. I'll just take a bunch of peptides and then it'll heal everything and it'll make everything magically better. I'll get shredded. One of my one of my buddies actually like he like binge eats Doritos and he's a big time captain now. So he sits in a desk, doesn't get a lot of activity, and I don't even know if he's like what his training is anymore. But he was telling me about all his peptides. I'm like, dude, are you working out? And he was like, well, yeah, And I'm like, what? It's not gonna, I don't think it helps. I don't know a ton about peptides, but I don't think they help if you don't train. So anyway, talk to me about like what peptides are and then like how to use them appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so just like anything else, right? Like we're never going to get away from people wanting a quick fix and taking the easy way out. So it's always going to be that way. I mean, it's that way with anabolics, it's that way with any kind of medication. Like how many diabetics, like my mom, for instance, like they don't change their diet, they eat like crap and they just take metformin. So same thing with peptides, but obviously if you use them in context and you do things correctly, they can be a force multiplier. So peptides are kind of misunderstood because they have a lot of different actions, right? So it's not like for instance, like blood pressure medications. It's like it's kind of all the same class of drug. They just do like slightly different things. Well, with peptides, like they do all sorts of different things in your body. It's not like it's one kind of like class, right? So a peptide is like a short chain of amino acids. It's a little protein, and they're generally things that your body already produces natively, but they have a wide variety of actions. None of them, no two are really similar, and they don't work on the same pathways. So you have peptides that are involved in healing factors like perfusion and angiogenesis, which is the formation of blood vessels in your muscles. And then you have like these GLPs, which they cause you to produce more of a hormone that makes you feel full. And then you have peptides that work in your brain to help you synthesize dopamine. Like it's not like one class of things. So that when people are like, I'm just gonna take peptides, it's like that's like saying, hey, I'm gonna start taking medicine. It's like what? Like for what? Like what medicine you're gonna take? And then so when people they look at peptides kind of like a buffet. So they look at like this list of peptides and like, I wanted this one and this one and this one. It would be like going to the doctor and being like, when someone asks you what peptides to take, it's like going to the doctor and saying, hey, doc, what medicine should I be on? And it's like, well, I don't know. What's wrong with you? Right. So I look at it more of like it's a tool for a job. Okay. So like maybe in some sense you look at all these peptides and see what their actions are, and then you kind of reverse engineer and you're like, okay, like I have that problem. Maybe I could benefit from that. Maybe I could benefit from this. But the wrong way to look at it would just be like, I'm just going to take all of these things to try to like just supercharge my body. There's no free lunches, dude, right? Like they do have effects. And some of these effects, they can be problematic down the road because when you take a peptide, essentially, the peptide itself is not doing anything. The peptide is telling your body to do something. Well, that requires substrate. It requires, energy. It requires nutrients to do that. And so it is entirely possible to be taking, some kind of peptide and, deplete yourself of some of this substrate. And so I don't think people realize that they are incurring some kind of cost, some kind of debt when they're taking this stuff. Not to say that it's not good to take it. Again, right tool, right job. But it's not just like this kind of free for all, like people kind of imagine.
Yeah. Specifically, can we discuss the GLPs and Reta, tirzepatide, and Ozempic? Um, like, tell me what the difference is between those three, because I get tons of questions about it, and I know enough to be dangerous, but like, let's differentiate like those three, and then kind of you mentioned and alluded to like what they do, but let's get a little bit more specific on that, and then my main question is about those, like personally, like how long should you take those? Are they like a life? Because I hear a lot of people talk about like, well, you just take them forever. I'm like, well,
Right.
what if I just don't want to pay that cost every, that monthly cost of like, because that shit's kind of, it'll get expensive. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like if you're just going to take it for the rest of your life. So is that appropriate? Is that the goal? And if not, is there a rebound effect afterwards?
Sure. Yeah. So there's kind of like three main ones. I mean, there's a lot of different GLPs that are kind of like never really got super popular. There's a ton of them. But yeah, the most popular ones would be semaglutide, which is the trade name Ozempic. There's tirzepatide, which I think is Mounjaro, and then there's retatrutide, which I don't know if it has a trade name yet because it's not finished with trials. But so Ozempic or semaglutide is like kind of the first generation, right? So it has one mechanism of action. So it's you know whatever glucagon-like peptide, right? And so basically it simulates or stimulates the production of glucagon, which is going to make you less hungry. And so that's really all it does. It just reduces your appetite. And so people lose body fat by virtue of not eating so much. Well, tirzepatide has two mechanisms of action. So it's glucagon-like peptide, and then it also has something called GIP, which basically helps your pancreas produce more insulin. So it has a little bit more of like a direct metabolic effect in addition to the appetite suppression. Retatrutide is kind of like the latest and greatest, right? So there's three mechanisms of action. Basically, just another way of ramping up the metabolism, essentially. Um, and so, yeah, like you said, I mean, they're making your body do something that isn't sustainable forever because eventually you're going to like run out of or deplete the body's ability to keep up. Like you're artificially putting your metabolism into overdrive, and there's only so long that you can continue to do that. So I kind of got off track just kind of describing what was the other thing we wanted to talk about.
What's like in your mind, like what's the appropriate use of those? Like, is it appropriate to take them forever? And then if not, like how should you use it? And then my last question on it is like, is there a rebound effect after coming off of it?
Yeah, so I mean, initially they're developed as diabetes medications. So if you're using it for on-label use, like you shouldn't use it unless you're diabetic. And so people that use it, quote, recreationally, obviously they're using it just to lose body fat, and then, also it's going to improve their insulin sensitivity and stuff like that too. So, I mean, it's, technically you're not supposed to use it unless you have like the problem that it's indicated for. But obviously that's not everybody. So the vast majority of people are using it to assist in fat loss. And they can be very powerful if they're used correctly. The issue becomes that because it suppresses your appetite, all of them suppress your appetite to a degree. The issue is that people they don't eat enough because now they have no appetite, and so they're kind of doubling down on their diet, and so now they're atrophying muscle mass as well as body fat, and they end up destroying their metabolism because now they're losing all their muscle mass as well as body fat. And so if you're not eating enough, especially enough protein, and you're not resistance training, then you're going to lose as much muscle mass as you will fat. And that's kind of what a lot of people kind of have as a counter argument to GLPs is that in a lot of these studies, like half of the weight loss came from muscle mass. Well, that's because the people who were taking them weren't training and they weren't eating. When I was a fireman, man, I went on multiple calls where somebody had passed out and we checked their blood sugar and it's super low, and they wake up and they're like, "Oh, I've been taking Ozempic and haven't eaten for 3 days." It's like so there. Sometimes people use them incorrectly by doubling down on their diet, right? And like instead of going whatever 500 calories under their maintenance or something, they just completely drop all calories because they're like, "Well, this is going to be a faster cheat code." Well, sorry, like you're still subject to like your metabolism and your body's need for blood sugar. So you can use it to make the process maybe a little bit faster, a little bit easier, but it's very easy to go overboard and abuse it and then have those negative side effects. Um, and then, yeah, like staying on it long term, probably not a great idea. Again, because you are kind of artificially ramping up that metabolism. And, frankly, we don't know what some of the long term effects are of this stuff. You get, a slowdown of your gastric emptying, which there are side effects to that. And people have had serious side effects or even died from, their gastric system essentially stopping and having all sorts of problems from that. As far as a rebound effect goes, I haven't seen that personally. And if you do get something like that where your appetite is suppressed, you lose a bunch of body fat, you get off the drug, and then you go back to eating the way that you were, those old habits, then of course you're going to go back to where you were. The other thing to consider too is that like if you're in a steep calorie deficit for a long time, and you get off of the drug, your body is going to be like, holy crap, we need food. And it's going to ramp up all those hunger signals. And then you're going to be super hungry. But it's not the lack of the drug that's doing that. It's like that's just what your body's state is in because it's so depleted, which is another reason why it's so important to still diet correctly while you're on the drug.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I like that. That made sense to me, but like saying it out loud, it's like, oh yeah, well, people aren't going to do that unless they're advised on a plan on how to do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because yeah, human nature. Oh, if one is good, seven is better,
Yeah.
and then let me take seven right now, and then when I'm done, I'm just gonna be done. Yeah, I'm finished. And and then that's it. So would you say like you want to titrate up slowly with that stuff, right? So if you want to like you want to ramp it up like inch by inch, depending on what the dosage is for you. And then when you are done coming off of it, like titrate back down or like cold turkey.
Honestly, man, like the way that I've done it, the way my clients have done it has just been kind of cold turkey because,
Okay.
we do it correctly to where we get to a point of leanness that we can kind of maintain. Then there's other things that come along with that too, like having the right kind of like mindset shift to, put us in a state where we're just building the habits of eating healthy and all that kind of stuff along the way. Um, but yeah, I mean, you don't want to titrate it up too quickly. So we always start at the lowest effective dose. And the reason that we know we're at an effective dose is really just from the appetite suppression. So there's really no way to know how much of an effect it's exerting on the other pathways. So the appetite suppression then becomes like the subjective metric that we use to determine the dose. So we start at like retatrutide, kind of my common, protocol would be 0.5 milligram twice a week for a total of 1 milligram a week. And then once the appetite suppression fades, then we bump it up to 2, right? And then maybe we go 2.5, maybe we go 3. But we always start low because some people are hyper responders to this stuff. So I've seen people take a 0.5 milligram and they can't eat for a week because they just, for whatever reason, their physiology, they just respond crazy to it. And looking at food makes them nauseous. And so that person, if they had started at like 2 milligrams, they would have had a really bad time. So we always start low. Yeah, and we just titrate up as needed. And that's basically it, man. And then, obviously you're getting those metabolic effects kind of happening in the background. And so it's not just the appetite suppression. If it's like retatrutide or something, you're also getting like a direct metabolic effect from the drug as well. But there's no way to measure that, so we go based on hunger signaling.
Yeah. I mean, personally, when I was taking Retta, when I hit 3 milligrams a week, like I noticed a huge like increase in like, dude, I'm like dropping body fat like crazy.
Hmm.
And it was, and so that went really well, almost to the point where it kind of worried me. Like, dude, this is like almost too effective. Like, I think I might need to go back down. And then,
Yeah.
and then I only kept that up for like, I think 8 weeks total. That's with the like ramping up. And then, and then I noticed I got really bad acid reflux, like really
Hmm.
bad. And I was like, I don't know if this is just because I've always kind of gotten that like on and off throughout my life. I was like, well, maybe it's just this, like I've been eating, messed up. I need to reevaluate that, like my meal timing, my like eating before bed, stuff like that. Increase some apple cider like vinegar or introduce that prior to eating, and that helped a little bit. But then I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna start like moving off of this because I was done with my time with it anyway, and it went away. And I was like, I think that was the thing.
Yeah, it's a common side effect. And the thing you have to remember is that it's slowing the rate of gastric emptying. So you're getting some level of like fermentation in the gut. And so that's going to produce more, gas and things like that. It could potentially cause acid reflux. So those are all kind of things to watch out for. Um, but actually, so GLPs have actually been kind of a miracle for me. So I have a condition called bile acid malabsorption. And essentially what happens is, when you eat food, you produce bile acid. Well, to digest it, it's supposed to be reabsorbed in the intestine after it's used to, break down food. But in some people, for whatever reason, that mechanism isn't working. And so what ends up happening is you get like terrible diarrhea. It's just like you can't eat anything without having it pass through you super fast because these bile acids are basically just like flowing through your guts. And one of the like unintended effects of a GLP is that because it slows the gastric emptying a little bit, it gives the bile acid a little bit more time to be like reuptook and back into the gallbladder. And so for me, it's actually been a godsend for like a growth phase, for instance, because when I ramp up my food production normally, I start to have really bad digestive problems to where like I'm not absorbing a lot of these nutrients because they're just flowing through me so fast. Well, when I take a really low dose of retatrutide and I let the appetite suppression wear off, I still get all of those benefits of a little bit delayed gastric emptying. So I can actually eat as much food as I want without having any like stomach problems. So um, kind of like a special use case or whatever, but there are
Yeah.
people that use it intentionally for growing muscle and even for staying lean while growing muscle. Because if you keep the dose low enough, you don't get the strong appetite suppression, but you get the insulin sensitivity benefits. So it can help you stay lean while you're trying to bulk up.
Hmm. Is there anything with like IBS or Crohn's that this would help with? Like just
Well, so
other.
so bile acid malabsorption is a form of IBS. It just sort of underdiagnosed, and it's frustrating because when you go to the doctor and you tell them that you have like these gastric problems, if they test you for Crohn's and it's negative, typically they'll just say, "Oh, well, you have IBS." Well, IBS isn't really a diagnosis; it's a syndrome, right? It's like a collection of symptoms, but it doesn't tell us like what's going on. And so there are actually a lot of people who have been diagnosed with IBS, which is just like this very broad diagnosis, who actually have bile acid malabsorption. And there are a couple different pharmaceuticals that can correct this, but a lot of people that have it never get diagnosed with it. And I actually kind of just stumbled upon it because of using the GLPs. So I got on the GLP and it fixed this problem, which made me kind of look into it a little bit more. And that's how I found out that that's what I had. But a lot of people who have quote IBS, the doctor just never really, dives any deeper. And so they never really correct the problem. They're told to live with it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it's like a NOS, like not otherwise specified. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Here you go. Like this is
That's
just
the
yeah.
doctor's just like, I don't know, you have tummy ache syndrome. And it's like, oh, good, that's helpful. Thank you.
Um, yeah, so with on the back end of my use of the Retta, like here's a big thing that I look at, and I kind of did this incorrectly. So I was like, it gave me like a light bulb moment. But like I had a really good run of it, right? So I was like 10 pounds down. I got really, really lean. Used it for a very short time and did exactly what it needed to do on the back end. Like I had surgery, and so this isn't really like indicative of what I think normal would be. But so I gained basically all of it right back. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, one, I had surgery, so you can't really like, I went from like 100 to zero. And then I got off of it at the same time too. So like, who knows if this was, too many variables, right? Um, but I also noticed like my eating habits, like you said, like you hit the nail on the head with that just in passing, is if you don't really work on your habits and your behaviors while you have the appetite suppression, while the food noise is quiet, then whenever you come off of this, it's going to come right back. And that's what I really think is cool about this stuff is it allows you space to work on your psychology, on your mindset, on your like behaviors to figure out like why you want food even though you're not hungry. Because I think, and I've talked to enough people, and I actually had some of this too, where it's like, I'm not hungry right now. My appetite's suppressed. This thing is working, right? It's doing just what it's supposed to do. But when I sit down and watch Netflix at the end of the night, after like a hard day of like just being stressed and like, I'm just going to chill out, like, why do I just want to eat whatever's in the fridge, even though I'm not hungry for it? It's like, huh, well, this has to be like the part where it's like you got some space here between stimulus and response. Now you need to work on it. And if you're not doing that, if you're just prescribed a drug by, your general practitioner or something like that, like it's not going to work long term unless you just want to be on this thing forever and ever and ever. And then even then, because like you said, the dose response, you're gonna have to increase, right? As you become more accustomed to that dose, like you're gonna be increasing the doses potentially forever. I just you have to there has to be another piece of this where it's like if you're going to get prescribed this, you also need to get prescribed, mental health counseling, behavioral counseling, stuff like that.
No, I totally agree. I think maybe it can be a catalyst for, making those longer term changes and kind of making that shift. And, I mean, frankly, like your identity. And that's something that I talk about all the time is like people make a lot of temporary efforts. They talk about like discipline, and we've talked about this. They talk about discipline and motivation. They do New Year's resolution. I'm going to do the 75 hard, but it's like, okay, well, like what happens after that? Right. And the problem is that you're viewing these things as temporary efforts. Like you still see yourself, like you still have the identity of this person who is whatever, overweight and overeats and has, whatever habits, doesn't train and those sorts of things. So to make something a long-term change, you have to like fundamentally change who you are and who you see yourself as being. It's not something that you can just power and will yourself through for the rest of your life, whether you want to, say that it's discipline or whatever. I'm sorry, but even discipline isn't going to carry you through forever. And frankly, like I wouldn't want to be constantly fighting myself until the day that I die with this stuff. Um, like people ask me all the time. I mean, obviously I do fitness for a living, but they're always like, well, how do you stay so disciplined to go to the gym and eat right? And I'm like, it doesn't take me any discipline. It's just who I am. I just like, this is just what I do. It's as natural to me as like, I don't know, brushing my teeth in the morning or something. It's, like when you're scrolling on your phone, does that require discipline? No, because it's just like a part of who you are. You're just somebody that enjoys doing that. So I think a big component of this is, using that time that you're on that to do that mental work and, turn yourself in your own mind into the person who, doesn't snack before bed or who does go to the gym and train and actually becoming that person and then, allowing reality to reflect that in the end. But it can't be something that's again like a temporary effort or resolution because that's why most people just they go right back to where they were. They work hard again, they go right back to where they were. They just never make that long-term change in their own mind.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times they don't go right back to where they were, they get worse. And then they ramp up harder to go the other way. And it doesn't get quite as so it's like this downward yo-yo until they just kind of bottom out and crash and either quit or die. Um, but yeah, like yeah, and we've talked about this, the discipline, motivation, this all this like social media bullshit. And even like dudes like Jocko and David Goggins, it's like, yeah, that's like they make their living off of saying like discipline, 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 but they're not white knuckling their way through life. You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly.
They're not doing it. Like you cannot white knuckle your way through life ever. And it's kind of like walking by the donuts, in the office. Like you can only do it so many times before you're gonna crack. You know what I mean? So like, what do you do? How do you hack that? Well, don't walk that way. You know what I mean? Like, just don't go over there. Best self-defense. Don't be there. And
Hmm.
uh, and that's what people don't see. And they don't read between the marketing. It's like those dudes are just really good at hacking their environment and just deciding like I'm not going to put myself in a position to fail. I'm going to put myself in a position to win. And how do I construct my life around winning? And it's a lot less to do with motivation and discipline than what people think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right. Like you aren't going to white knuckle your way through life. And the people who are successful at anything, they just love to do it. And then, yeah, like maybe there are times where discipline is required, right? I mean, like everybody has their moments where they have to power through things. That's just part of life and being human. But the people who are really successful at anything just love doing it. And so you have to, again, like you have to turn yourself into the person that loves doing that thing. And like for me, it's training. Like I love to train. And so like if you want that to be a part of your life long term, you have to figure out how to enjoy doing that. It's got to just become a part of who you are. There isn't a single person that's a successful athlete or businessman or whatever that doesn't like love what they're doing because again, like yeah, you're not just going to power through it every single day forever. And frankly, I wouldn't want to live like that anyways.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this. Have you ever, or what have you ever had to learn to love to keep doing it? You know what I mean? Like a habit or a skill or something like that. Is there anything that you started and you're like, I hate doing this, but I know I got to keep doing it and it's going to be a long-term thing. I have to learn to love this.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been business, right? Like, so I have my online coaching business, and I didn't love it at first. Like, I didn't like posting on Instagram and talking to people in the DMs and talking to people on Zoom and those sorts of things. And so I had to like turn myself into the person that was good at those things and liked them because it's just like everybody else. I was always like, well, social media is stupid, it's all fake and this and that. And so yeah, I had to kind of fake it until I made it, and make it just a part of my identity. And I tell this story all the time, but when I really wanted my business to take off, I realized that I had to like I had to kind of like convince myself that I was successful at it before I was successful. And so this is going to sound really cheesy and dumb, but when I sold like my first couple training packages, I made a few $1,000s, and I went out and I bought like, this MacBook, and I bought like some Lululemon workout clothes. And, I started like doing my work at like, fancy coffee shops and stuff. And so I kind of started like pretending in my head like I was this like big shot fitness business guy before I had become that. And by virtue of doing that, I was like doing the habits that that person did. Like I was pretending that I was that person. And I was like lying to myself and convincing myself that I was that guy, which then obviously made me do the things that that guy does. And then eventually by doing that, I was successful. And so I talk about that all the time where you kind of have to lie to yourself and put all these little reminders in your life that you are this fit person or this successful person at this thing before you will actually become them. Like when I was first going to the gym, I mean, I started out, training 170 pounds and I'm 6'5", so I was like a very skinny dude. When I first started going to the gym, I mean, it was a totally foreign environment to me. I wasn't strong, I wasn't jacked. I didn't know what I was doing. But like I just kind of like would like pretend when I walked into the gym like I was this like big strong bodybuilder, not in like a goofy way, like somebody yelling at the weights and shadow boxing in the mirror, but just kind of like I would watch like videos of like bodybuilders working out, and then I would like be at the gym just kind of like doing the same form that they did and kind of just like thinking of myself that way. And then eventually like reality caught up to that because I started doing those things that those people did, and then I became that guy. And so I think a lot of the times, like you have to, again, like you have to convince yourself that you are that person, and you have to get rid of all the things in your life that remind you of the other stuff. So, you want to be fit or whatever. It's like, hey, maybe you need to like, I don't know, portray yourself that way and like post stuff about fitness, even though like you're totally out of shape, and kind of just like almost like it's like delusional, right? But eventually it will become reality. And that's kind of how I think manifestation works. Because I used to think that that phrase was like this woo woo thing that, like, high school girls talk about. I'm manifesting. Well, what I realized was that, like, manifesting just means that, like, you're convincing yourself that something is real, and nothing is happening in the stars when you do that. It's just that then you start doing those things that make that reality happen. And that's exactly how that works. And so I think that's exactly how it has to work with long-term fitness and fat loss.
Yeah, I think that's any major change you want to do, like that's the process, I think. And so as far as roadblocks, because we talk about that and it's like to me, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Like let's just all do that. Let's all manifest and then everything will be cool. But like you start doing that and you run into roadblocks and hurdles. You know what I mean? That's what people don't plan for those. And they like they'll do what they're supposed to do. They'll slow you down or stop you, right? So you have to understand also that like there's going to be some shit, and who knows when it's going to pop up, but it's gonna come. And what really sucks is like I think about that with business too, where it's like, well, why don't I want to post on social media today? Like, why don't I put something together that I think is cool and I don't post it? What am I worried about? And it's always what other people think. People are gonna think I'm stupid. People are gonna think I'm fucking dumb. The guys on my team are gonna make fun of me. And I, sometimes it stops me. And it's like, dude, like that sucks that I'm so worried about the people closest to me that are gonna make fun of me for it. And I think that's true of fitness too. Has that been your experience with that or not?
Yeah, of course, man. And maybe they will. Unfortunately, like that, and that's part of the discipline aspect, right? So there are times when you're going to have to do things like that that are uncomfortable, and maybe you're going to have to cut some people out of your life. Like if you're somebody who, one of your habits that you're trying to kick is you go to the bar, right? And your buddies are like texting you, come to the bar, don't be a dork. You think you're some big fitness guy, but you're not. I mean, that's when it's going to come down to like, okay, how bad do you really want this? Like, are you really willing to like, maybe not burn some bridges, but like put those friendships on the back burner for the sake of the state that you want to get to? And frankly, like I think that's why most people don't make it, is because they're just not willing to make those sacrifices or go through that kind of like social shame process. I remember one time when I was at the gym, man, when I was just getting started and I was real skinny and I was maybe benching 135 or something. I kept a logbook with me at the gym. It was like a pen and paper. I was writing down every single rep and set because I was like so serious about it. Well, these really big, like, or at least I thought they were big at the time, bodybuilder guys on the bench next to me, and this is when I was in the Marine Corps. They made some, like, one of them made a comment under his breath. He was like, "Oh, look at this guy over here writing in his diary, dear diary, I lifted 15 pounds or something like that." And so and I just like pretend I didn't hear him, put my headphones in, but yeah, like you are gonna have to go through that stuff, and frankly, like that's going to be the hardest part for most people. And sometimes you're going to have to cut off relationships and cut off bad habits, and it's going to be uncomfortable, man. But you have to want the thing that's on the other side bad enough to be willing to endure that pain or that stress.
Yeah, and like when you're deciding who you want to become in different chapters of your life, right? So like there's always forks in the road, and you get to decide like, do I want to stay here? Do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? You know what I mean? And it's like, is it worth it? Because when you go right, there's going to be some people that go left and some people that stay put, and that's what I still work on this. Is like you might be going to a place that your buddies aren't, and that's okay. Like you're just going to a different spot. And like it doesn't mean that you're ascending into a different place or you're leveling up like people talk about. Like maybe you are, or maybe you're just going a different direction. And that's cool too. You know what I mean? But you have to be willing to walk that path by yourself if you want to get to where you're going, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is "I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul." It's from it's like a Hemingway or poem, something like that. But yeah, I mean, in the end, it is up to you, right? Like no one else is going to do it for you. And so, yeah, some people are just unwilling to make those uncomfortable decisions. And I think a lot of things in life come down to you being willing to make uncomfortable decisions or be uncomfortable. And that is something that I believe can be trained, right? So one of the things that I have a lot of my clients do to work on mindset and doing the uncomfortable thing is, first thing when they get up in the morning, I'll have them turn the shower on the coldest possible setting and just get in, like jump in, no hesitation for like 5 seconds. It's not like a cold plunge or anything, but it's just a way of you doing something first thing in the morning that you don't want to do. Okay, and then that then is going to carry over, right? Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's going to bleed over into other decisions that you make in your life throughout the day. So just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's the same decision you're going to have to make when you're sitting on the couch and you know that you should get up and go to the gym. So you got to start being good at being uncomfortable.
And it's not just being uncomfortable. It's like starting the day with a win and doing what you said you're going to do, and like just being accountable to yourself. I think it was a Huberman episode I was listening to, but that like building that process in your brain of like just impulse control, right? Doing what you said you're going to do and not doing what you said you're not going to do. Like I think the analogy was the guy, whoever was on the interview. I wish I remembered who it was, but it was like, I really want to pick up that paperclip and fidget with it, but I'm telling myself not to, and I'm choosing not to. And that's building a wiring in your brain that's going to develop these and make like discipline, make that easier for you. Um, and yeah, I'm glad that you brought up cold plunging because I think that that's worth discussing at least a little bit.
We've
Uh,
talked about that. Yeah.
well, I think that so this is something that like I've been into cold exposures since before it was cool. Like I got into it in like 2015, 2016. So like I've been doing it on and off for about 10 years. That and then breath work. And I got introduced to it through Brian McKenzie, who's like old school, like CrossFit endurance. But that
Yep, I
dude,
remember
that
him.
well, Brian is like he is an absolute guru, and his Art of Breath course that I had at my gym when he was doing that was amazing. Worked through a lot of the pranayama breathing, the apnea breathing, the Wim Hof style breathing, superventilation, hyperventilation, all that kind of stuff, along with the cold exposure, and it's all designed for nervous system regulation. And that is something that it's like we don't understand enough, especially in the first responder, like tactical community. Like your nervous system is fucked if you do these jobs. And it's the job is designed to wreck it. So you have to understand at least a little bit about what's going on with your nervous system so you can regulate it. And the biggest thing that I noticed the first time I got into a full submersion, like cold exposure, was man, this feels just like a car chase. You know what I mean? It feels like my first car chase. Like I can't breathe. I'm just like, holy crap, like what's going on here? And I just want to get out. It's super, it's like it's painful. I can't catch my breath. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how long it's going to last, right? And then after, you know, like 30 seconds, you start to calm down. You start to realize like I'm okay here, and then all of a sudden everything kind of crashes out, and you can hang out there for a minute. Um, and then by that time you're done. You get out. So I've seen people use it for long duration stuff like that, and it's like, dude, it's just not worth the what you think you're getting out of it for a long-term exposure. And if your goal is hypertrophy, like it's obviously like we know that it takes you the other way. So use it for what it is. Use it to get in, spike your nervous system on purpose because it is really good at that. Every time I've never not gotten into the cold and like I've never gotten into the cold and not gotten that nervous system like that sympathetic response ever. I don't know that you can unless you're like a psychotic person like Wim Hof. You know what I mean? So you have to use the tool for what it is, and that is just to stimulate the sympathetic response and then learn to regulate in the moment. And then once you accomplish that, you're done.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, right tool, right job, right? So yeah, from a physiological standpoint, I don't think that it's worth it, right? I don't think it's a good idea to lower your core body temperature, stay in there for a long period of time. I don't think it's beneficial. Being in a sympathetic nervous state is obviously not conducive to recovery. It's not conducive to anabolism. Being in a parasympathetic rest and digest state is. However, if you're using it as a tool for what you're saying, right, like nervous system regulation or kind of like training that response, then absolutely, I think it can be beneficial. But I think a lot of people they don't kind of like personalize these tools to them. And so they just see other people doing it. And then it's like, well, I'm just going to do it too because it's, quote, good for you. Right. Same thing is just like, oh, here's this peptide that everybody says is good. So I'm just going to take it. Well, maybe in your context, it's not a good thing. Like, dude, I'm very sympathetic wired, man. I'm just like I wouldn't say nervous, but I'm just like a wired kind of guy. And so things like that amp me up even more. It's detrimental for me. It doesn't help me with recovery. It makes things worse. I'm already in such a heightened state all the time that the things that are more beneficial to me are the things that are more relaxing. And a lot of people like to do those like cold plunges and things like that because it like seems hardcore. But that might not necessarily mean that it's good for you, you know. And so somebody like a first responder, man, like if you're stressed out from work and you're like underslept and underfed, like maybe it's not a good time to go hop in the cold plunge and like add another stressor to your body. And even things like sauna, for instance, right? Like sauna is a stressor, right? And so, we think of sauna as something that's good for you. Well, maybe not in every context because all this stuff it's accruing some kind of like stress on your body. You're training hard, you're sauning, you're cold plunging, you're doing this, you're dieting. Well, you have all these stressors now. It's like, man, it could be a recipe for burnout, for disaster.
Yeah. Well, I know that's you say all those things. It's like, well, especially with like first responders who are a little bit more like us, a little bit more like alpha or wired sympathetic, you know, you really, at least I'm speaking personally, like I really have to like always take inventory of the stuff that I'm doing that's really sympathetic and hard versus the stuff that I'm doing that's helping me recover. And it's always out of whack. It's always out of whack. And then when it gets too out of whack is when I usually get hurt or sick,
Yeah.
or mentally broken, or I go out and I do something super retarded, like out in like with my buddies, something like that. Like that's usually when I make bad decisions too, is when I get way too out of whack with that.
Yeah, I think too, like some people really underestimate the recovery modality of like chilling.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to use all these special tools, but it's like, hey, maybe like the most effective tool for you today would literally to just be like go lay out by the pool, or
Yeah.
like as crazy as it sounds, like maybe it actually would be productive for you to sit on the couch and scroll on your phone for 45 minutes. I mean, you know what I mean? Like in some regards, like I think people underestimate the value of just resting. Like for instance, like I have a lot of clients who are super hard chargers and they just want to be in the gym all the time and they'll work a crazy overnight shift and then they'll go in the gym and they'll try to max out their deadlift and they think they're being hardcore and then 2 weeks later they start regressing. And so I tell guys all the time, like, hey, if you're not feeling it, let's just take a rest day. And that's something that I've really had to train myself to do because I'm just like you, like I'm a go-getter, man. And I don't like skipping training. So I've really had to learn to regulate myself and realize like, okay, This one training session is a drop in the bucket of all the workouts that I do throughout the year. If I go to the gym right now and accrue more debt, I'm probably going to start digging myself into a recovery hole. If I miss this session, whatever, maybe I miss out on one workout worth of getting stronger and I'll just make it up next time. But now I'm not going to be, digging myself into that recovery hole. And so in the end, I'm going to be better. And I actually ran this kind of experiment on some of my clients a few years ago. I put, I think it was like 20 of my clients on the same 16-week training block. And with half of them, I had them do a deload week every fourth week, where they went to the gym and they did like half volume, half weight. And at the end of the program, the group that went to the gym and did deloads every fourth week were like 10% further along in their strength progression than the guys who didn't. So something to be said for that for sure. Despite them actually touching heavy weights less, like they trained less, but they got further because they were recovering like physically, but also neurologically.
Yeah. So you're saying take like a full deload week versus overall volume being lower.
So actually, what's interesting about the deload week is people don't realize how productive it can be. So it's not actually just rest. Yes, we're giving our tendons and ligaments and skeleton time to catch up to like the muscles and those sorts of things, and letting the nervous system rest from heavy loads and that kind of stuff. But something to be said as well is like there's a lot of strength adaptation that's made from the skill of lifting weights. Like there's an entire training program by a guy named Dan John called Easy Strength, where I think it's like 4 out of 5 training sessions, you do like 50% of your max for 2 sets of 5, and that's it. And you go heavy once a week. And that training session produces some pretty crazy results because a lot of your strength comes from learning the motor pattern of the movement. So everybody thinks like, well, the only way to get stronger or grow muscle mass is by going hard and like taxing my muscles and going to failure. Well, that's not true. Like another way of getting stronger is becoming more efficient at that movement. And so it's just like it's another pathway for growth, right? Because if I can get stronger by, not going super hard and just focusing on technique, well, then when I do go back to those heavy weights, now I'm more efficient. Now I'm able to move more weight, which means I can tax the muscle more. And so it's kind of an investment in getting stronger. So what I try to coach my athletes on is like the deload week's not actually a rest week. We still go to the gym and we still train. It's just that the deload week gives us a chance, yes, to rest, but also to improve motor patterns with a light weight that's not going to like throw off our technique. Because like you're lifting weights, right? You're doing a squat. You know this, like if the bar is off by 1 inch, like in a squat or a bench press or a deadlift, it throws the whole lift off, right? Well, if I can practice and get better with a lighter weight and become more efficient, I'm going to then be stronger because now I'm going to move the weight better.
Yeah. Yeah, movement practice. Everything is about movement practice because I mean, as we age, especially like you're not going to be as strong. Like I'm never going to be as strong as when I played college football ever. You know what I mean? Like that was the peak of my strongness. And like but how and why do I train for strength? It's movement practice so I can maintain strength for other things for different goals. And as much as the weight on the bar might never quite be as high, like that's okay. There's more to this than that. But so funny, like listening to you talk about deloads and like nervous system regulation and stuff like that. And it's like all of these things that that like when I was doing CrossFit hard, when I first started open my CrossFit gym, like I it was the exact opposite. And as I kind of developed into like a coach with half a brain versus just like a young like mid-20s just like crazy person, I realized like, man, there are so many errors in this community. I don't even think I can be part of it anymore. You know what I mean? And it's funny, like I talked to OGs, like the big names. I won't call them out on it right now, but like big CrossFit names, like used to be level one coaches, used to be like games athletes. They're not connected anymore for the same reasons. Like
Yeah.
as we get older, we realize like, dude, you can't just burn things down with intensity every fucking day. Training till you throw up every day is a stupid plan. It doesn't matter what you're training for.
Yeah. No, totally agreed, man. I mean, there's something to be said for recovery. And then also, um, like, look, like some of the strongest athletes in the world, like, don't ever go above like 80% of their max unless they're in competition. But everybody just has it kind of ingrained in their head, like, the harder you work, the more results you get. And it's kind of like a very Western way of thinking. And not saying we should be lazy and not try hard or anything like that. But I think it is kind of just a sort of a cultural thing where people just think like the harder you do something and the more often you do it, the more effective it's going to be. And it's just simply not the case, man.
Yeah, a lot of times we get caught up on the outliers, on the like the 1% dudes that it's like, oh man, well that dude did it and look how good he is. I just need to replicate that. But like couple things, one, you're not that dude. And two, it's like if you really look at what they're doing, it's just like that Jocko thing we talked about. Like if you look at Bo Jackson and you look at like freak athlete of the century, and you really look at what his training was, he didn't train that hard. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like one, he's a natural mutant, and two, he's fully recovered. So like, you're not that guy. You can't pretend to be that guy. You have to look, you have to do things different. You have to do things for you. So yeah.
Part of our culture is that everybody starts on the same playing field. And we really don't like the idea that someone could be just naturally better than you at something else. But it's true and it's physical and it's like, look, dude, I don't care how hard I study, I'll never be Albert Einstein, right? It's the same thing with physicality. Like, dude, like I'll give you an example. Like Wayne Gretzky, they say that at his peak he could do like 10 push-ups, and his diet was like stadium hot dogs and pizza. And so
Yeah.
if I were to be like, well, I want to be like the best hockey player, then I'm going to replicate him and not work out and just eat hot dogs and pizza. It's like,
Yeah.
the people, look, the elite are the elite and they're going to be elite no matter what. And you can't try to replicate them. And that's why I say with coaching, for instance, a lot of people will look for like, oh, this guy's really jacked and strong, so I'm going to hire him as a coach. That actually might be the worst person to hire as a coach because they haven't had to overcome the struggles that you have had that you're going to have to overcome. If you were to ask like Ronnie Coleman, hey, Ronnie, how do I grow my delts? He'd be like, oh, I don't know. I just do like a few lateral raises. And like, oh, cool. I'm going to do the Ronnie Coleman few lateral raises program. It's like, it's not going to work for you, man. And so when you're looking for a coach, what you should be looking for is somebody who's helped a wide variety of people overcome a wide variety of problems. Because if I'm just me and I'm big and jacked, well, I've only had to overcome my problems, and those are not going to be your problems. So what's better is to find somebody who's more experienced, not necessarily just somebody who's like the best at what they do.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good thing to point out. But in the age of social media, it's like, well, how do you even like do your research enough on the person to be able to find out are they any good at or not? And it's like, I'm guilty of this too on social media, just posting highlight reel shit, and that kind of stuff. So it's hard to find truth on social media. That's for sure. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to differentiate yourself as like a good professional coach, because one, it's everything's short form, so you don't really have a whole lot of time to talk about stuff. And two, yeah, like there are just a lot of people like posting those highlight reels, and
yeah,
it's like somebody got a six pack and now they call themselves a coach. And so the average consumer sees that and they're like, well, he has what I have, so I'm going to hire him. And you just have to be better at discerning that. But the unfortunate thing from a business owner perspective is like, we're good coaches and have a lot of experience, but we're competing against people who are just grabbing attention because of like what they can do. Or on the female side, right? Like you're the girl with like the nicest body or something like that. And so these girls sign up with you because they want to have a body like you. It's like that person just knows how to grow their own body. Like just because you got that result doesn't mean you're going to be able to get anybody else that result.
yeah. Be a good consumer. That's the same thing I used to say at my CrossFit gym because it was like you come in and to my gym and you would get a totally different experience. And it was like, well, this isn't anything like the gym down the road. I'm like, well, good. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that's you have to be a good consumer. And when people would come into my gym, I would always tell them like, hey, we're gonna do 2 weeks, and then I want you to go to the other gyms. I want you to see what the experience is. Because one, if you jive with those people better, then go there. But two, like you need to understand that we do stuff different, and we focus on movement, we focus on mechanics, and that all the things that hopefully won't destroy you that those other gyms are gonna do. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, man. And I have all the time people asking me in my DMs on Instagram, like, hey, what's your workout plan? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you because like I don't want, they're like, well, I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, no, dude, like you're not going to get the result that I'm going to get. It's like you're totally different. And that's the entire gist of my coaching business is everything is highly individualized. And it's tough because people are always asking questions they want a direct answer to. They're like, what's the best version of the squat? And I'm just like, it depends. Like,
Right.
okay, well, what's the best diet? I'm like, it depends. And it's like, that's my answer to everything.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, that's not what gets you the most amount of followers. What gets you the most amount of followers is like being myopic and be like, it's the keto diet, it's the Zercher squat, it's this,
Yeah.
it's that. And then people like, they go to you because you have like the answer. But a good coach would just say, like, I don't know, it's all contextual and we got to look at the big picture.
Yeah, no, my buddy Aaron Genetti, you know where that's even shifting gears slightly, but my buddy Aaron Genetti owns well, I think I'm not sure if it's a CrossFit affiliate still or not, but he's in Columbus, Ohio, and he's a big time like self-defense, concealed carry, jujitsu black belt, like he's badass. But talking to him about self-defense, about combatives, about firearms and jujitsu, it's like so you ask him a question, it's always it depends. And the more I'm around good coaches, the more I realize like if that's the answer, you know that they're probably decent, at least decent. Is if they can't give you like a black and white answer because they're so well versed in the context that they know the nuance behind everything. It's like, well, I can't give you a straight answer to that. We're going to have to talk a little bit more. I'm going to need to see some things first.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it is tough to get that across to people because everybody wants the easy answer. Everybody wants the peptide, right? They just like, what peptide do I take? It's like, it depends, man. And it makes it hard. But the people who you do bring in that you're able to do that, kind of holistic analysis of and figure out what's going to work for them. Well, now they can unlock a whole new level of progress that they wouldn't have before because they've been doing those generic one size fits all prescriptions. And now when they're not doing it, the difference is night and day. I mean, all the time, like I'm posting videos and pictures of clients that they're losing 30 pounds of fat, putting 50 pounds on the bench, and it's like all happening at the same time. Well, I don't have any like magic secret sauce for these things to happen. It's just that I've taken a look at the entire picture of the person and figured out like what that individual needs this week. And I apply that tool and I make the thing happen. And that's just how it works. It's a night and day difference, man, when you start doing things that are correct for you and not just things that are, touted as the best thing.
Right. And just not some random novel exercise that you saw like Joe the influencer posting. You know, it's like dude, you can't make it. You can't make an entire workout of I actually called somebody out on this on social media, or I just asked him a question and it was some speed coach and it was some ridiculous like nuance like or a novel movement of like a slosh pipe or a bag with something in it. I'm like, you can't have a whole speed program designed around crap like this. I go, well, what did you do for your primary movement that day, or your primary lift? And he was like, back squat. I was like, at least you told the truth. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you got all these people hooked on this like stupid overhead like balancing thingamajig, and it's like, dude, I know you're doing squats. I know you're doing deadlifts. So like, just like why? But nobody wants to show that because it's boring. You know?
It's so funny. Yeah, I get people all the time, and it's frustrating because I talk to so many people in the DMs about fitness. And I'm like, what are you doing right now? And they're like, oh, I'm doing kettlebells for functional fitness. And I'm just like, oh, not that kettlebells aren't good, not that like being functional isn't good, but it's like, what's really functional, dude, is just being like brutally strong. Like if okay, you're over here doing this like kettlebell twisty twirl thing or whatever. Do you not think, and it's like 70 pounds, let's say, do you not think that if you added 100 pounds to your deadlift, that you couldn't do more kettlebell twisty twirls because now that kettlebell is going to be a lighter kettlebell for you? Like, of course. And we talked about this with jujitsu because remember, I was, telling you like I didn't want to use my strength in jujitsu. I
Yeah.
wanted to like do the technique and stuff like that. Well, it's like, dude, one of the things that made me good at jujitsu was just being stronger than everybody else.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
and that came from doing squats, bench presses, deadlifts, and shoulder presses. And like, yeah, I plug in the gaps and the deficiencies with all those other things. And you have to be able to like, resist rotation and twist and turn and stuff like that. But those are all expressions of the maximal strength. Even something like running. Every step that I take when I run or I ruck is some percentage of my max effort step of my leg strength. So it stands to reason then that if I get my legs stronger, I can do more of those. Even if I want to get my push-ups up. Okay, if I take my bench press from 135 to 315, provided my cardiovascular, system stays as efficient, do you not think I'm going to be able to do more push-ups? Like, of course. Of course. Because I can
Yeah.
do more reps at 135 now than I could before. So then I can do more push-ups. Like,
Yeah.
It just maximal strength is the most important adaptation. Like, do you think you're going to be like, oh, I want to be better at balancing? Well, do you think that if you can put 400 pounds on your back and stand there with it and squat down and stand up, you're going to be better and more stable at balancing? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Just get strong, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So many things to to mention there. It's like I don't even want to really get into it, but like functional fitness, that's always been a terrible term. It's like what does that even fucking mean?
Well, it implies the existence of non-functional fitness. Like there's a version of being strong that's not good. You're bicep. You did a bicep curl and got your biceps stronger. That's bad. It's
Yeah.
bad to have strong biceps.
Dude, that is a literal conversation that I remember having in my CrossFit level one, and I bought into it. Where it was like they use the lateral raises as the example. Like, well, how do you quantify? How do you like lateral raises? That's not a functional movement. It's not seen in nature. And I remember thinking like that seems stupid, but yeah, that's true. It's not seen in nature. And I'm like, so now I look back on it, and then and it actually didn't take long because like at the same level one, I'm watching these games athletes work out. And like I was always regional, so I knew some of them, like, but I wasn't quite a games level athlete. Like I was like a tier below. So I remember watching them and talking to them, and I'm like, oh, well, what did you do after your Metcon or before your Metcon? It was like, oh, we did seated shoulder raises and like lateral raises and like banded pull aparts and reverse
Came full
rear
circle.
delts. And I'm like, but that was during the level one, and I was like, but these dudes just said none of this was functional. But it makes sense that you would want your shoulders stronger if you're going to do a billion kipping pull-ups. Otherwise, you're going to have slap tears, shit like that. So yeah, like they were doing non-functional stuff, but they just kind of weren't talking about it. So it's like you have to define like what is functional for you, but that goes back to like just goal setting. Like what's your goal? Like, all right, now we need to design a program that is directive for that goal, and then it is all of a sudden magically functional. If your goal is to squat 1,000 pounds, then it's going to have to be very one-sided for squatting, 1,000 pounds versus like, oh, if you want to do a bunch of twirly kettlebell shit and you want to be like I don't know, a lighter weight like tactical athlete running around and doing all that like Navy SEAL stuff, like all right, then squatting 1,000 pounds isn't going to be part of your goal.
Right.
So it's not fun like that's functional for one person, not functional for the other, but it's still functional overall because we're doing the same things. It just varies by degree.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, at some point there's diminishing returns, right? Like, hey, maybe as like this quote tactical athlete, getting your deadlift, bench press, and squat stronger is going to benefit those endeavors to a degree. Maybe you get your squat up to 405, and then to push past 405, we would have to bias so much of our training towards that it would be a detriment to everything else, and it wouldn't make those other things improve. So like maybe that's kind of like where we stop, and then we kind of maintain there. And it depends on the person. But yeah, like, look, if I have an athlete that needs to get their squat up and the end goal, let's say, is to get their squat, and they're like, well, I just train with barbells because, I just want to, I don't like machines and stuff like that. Well, if I'm watching you squat and I see that your quads are underpowered and we need to make your quads bigger and stronger, well, the best way to do that is going to be to put you on like a hack squat or a leg extension to where we can actually take the quad to failure. Because in the back squat, the quads might not be the point of failure for you. Right. So if we can isolate that muscle and make that thing stronger, then when we go back to the back squat, it's no longer the thing that's holding you back. And then it made you better at the squat. So then was the leg extension functional? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's I had the same conversations with my high school football players. One kid was like, he's our quarterback, and he was like, hey, I want to get my power clean better. And my sticking point's a turnover. I was like, yeah, your turnover kind of sucks. And he was like, well, what do I got to do to get better at that? I go, buddy, we don't have time for that. And I was like,
Yeah.
your power clean is good enough for what we need you to do. You have the requisite strength with this lift, where if we wanted to make you an Olympic weightlifter, you're not going to have time to work to watch film. You're not going to have time to do your agility work. You're not going to have time to go throw, right? And are you willing to give those things up to have a better power clean? He was like, that sounds stupid. I go, it is stupid. So don't worry about it. Just do the best you can with what you got. And if we get a little bit stronger, cool. If we don't, like, you're good. So yeah.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between the skill work on the field and then like making the muscle stronger in the gym. Right. So, let's say we have an athlete that we want, his legs to be stronger because it's going to make him better at his field work. We can have that athlete do hack squats and leg extensions and bodybuilding stuff. We don't have to mimic the exact thing you're doing on the field to get better at doing the thing on the field, because there's a big difference between GPP, right? Like general physical preparedness and making you stronger or making your muscle bigger. And then you can use that in the skill work. But the skill work doesn't have to necessarily be the same thing you're doing in the gym.
Yeah.
Like I remember when bar muscle ups were a big thing, people are like, well, this is like how you would get over a wall. So that's why we're doing it like this. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Like you make the muscle stronger and then you practice the skill separately
Yeah.
and then you're able to express that strength in the skill work.
Yeah, that is a huge, like going back to the jujitsu stuff, and the I think the tactical stuff too. Well, I mean, you see it in every sport venue, but people don't want to. They don't want to spend the time doing the dirty work, doing the strength work. They just want to skip to the part where they're good at their sport. And I understand that, but you don't get a workaround by making some dumbass movements in the weight room that kind of look like your sport. It's like that's stupid. Just go do the work and then go back to your sport. And it is just infuriating to see people do that. And then jujitsu does it a ton. And then and then they come back with this like, oh, well, that backhanded comment of like, oh, you're so strong. And it's like, dude, like I know you're insulting me, like because I just grabbed your head and choked you out with not even a real move technically. But
Yeah.
uh, but strength is a skill, and I've developed that for a long ass time. So if you've chosen not to develop that skill, but you've developed lasso guard and all these fancy like inversions and stuff like that, like good for you. You've chosen that path. I don't have that skills. I don't think that I will ever need those skills. So I'm probably not going to learn a ton about inversions and crap like that. Plus, my neck has fake parts in it. So when you go inverted, my counter to that is not the classic counter. I just grab your legs and staple them to the ground and you can't fucking move. You know what I mean? So like I've developed this skill set. So don't shit on it. You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly.
Like to learn to deal with it, learn to counter it. The only counter to strength in jujitsu is to get stronger because
Sure.
it's just about force production. And the
Yeah.
Gracies have said like, oh, this is the way that we can neutralize strength. Well, kind of, but not really. It pisses me off so bad when like people still say that. It's like, well, then why did jujitsu matches have weight classes?
Exactly. And yeah, people will say like, oh, strength doesn't matter in jujitsu, blah, 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 or combat sports or something. It's like, okay, let's just like thought experiment, take this to an extreme. I'm 7 feet tall and 400 pounds, and I've never trained jujitsu. And my opponent is a toddler who like just started jujitsu and they have some jujitsu skills and they've done more jujitsu than I have technically, right? Are they
Yeah,
going to beat me? No.
right.
Okay, so then obviously like there's some middle ground there. But the functional thing is so funny, like trying to simulate the exact thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to try to get out of a rear naked choke. So when I'm at the gym, I wrap a band around my neck, around the post, and like lift while I'm like
Yeah.
choking myself out. It's like just get stronger, get faster, get better conditioning, and then it will translate into that thing. It's even like with running. Like I have guys who are runners, and we've dropped their mile time multiple minutes and doing 90% of the work on the assault bike. They
Yeah.
maintain the skill of running and they build up their VO2 max and their conditioning in a way that doesn't, isn't like a detriment from all the impact of running to all their other training.
Yeah, and I've also worked with athletes that have been either endurance athletes or they need to improve their running just to pass like a entry level PT test, right, for a department. And it's like, well, show me what we got as far as like a squat or a deadlift. And that's like they have no eccentric strength at all. And it's like, oh shit, well, we need to develop like these strengths with the different like with the move just these movement patterns so you can produce force and you can
Hmm.
stabilize yourself against the ground, so like it and at the end of the day, and you already said it, but like it's just about who can produce more force for longer and how long can I produce this force over and over again. So even an endurance event like a marathon is still like you're still going to get benefit from increasing your 1 rep max back squat.
Yep. No, totally agree. And yeah, I hear people say a lot of the time, like, well, I don't want to be like big and slow. I don't want to be like a big, strong, slow guy. And it's like, well, putting a bigger engine in a car doesn't slow the car down just because the engine weighs more, right? So the reason that you perceive people who are big as like slow with poor endurance generally is because they don't train that stuff, right? Like when I showed up to my fire academy like selection process out here, it's very competitive, very physical. I was by far the biggest guy, and our first PT session, I beat everybody. because I have built my conditioning engine along with my strength. Now, at the extremes, is it going to be a problem? Like, yeah, it's probably going to be hard to perfuse 250 pounds of muscle mass if I'm running a marathon. So then maybe it's not ideal. But you can develop 90% of your endurance capacity, 90% of your strength capacity at the same time. It's only really when you want to take things to that top 1% level that you really have to hyper specialize. Um, but that goes back again to like why we don't really like CrossFit that much anymore. Okay, because like, look, and this is something I noticed too. So I was same era of CrossFit as you, like the Rich Froning era, when everybody was just doing CrossFit Metcons to get better at CrossFit, 3 rounds for time, AMRAP. Well, then they started making all these documentaries about Rich Froning's training, and he was like doing his rowing work completely by itself. He was
Yep.
doing his strength work completely by itself, and he built those capacities and then he put them together in the Metcon workout. Well, if you're doing that Metcon and that's your only training, one, you're never going to be able to lift enough weight to get stronger because you're limited by your cardiovascular fatigue from the Metcon. And then two, you're never going to maximally increase your cardiovascular ability because you have localized muscle fatigue from the weightlifting stuff. So you train these modalities separately and get better at both of them, and then you can just put them together in the skill work. Like, yeah, you have to learn how to do muscle ups and stuff like that, but that's learning. So you develop the strength, you develop the conditioning, then you can just blend it together. It's simple as that.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff. So I went to CrossFit Regionals in 2012, Central East. So I competed against Rich there, and then other guys like Dan Bailey, Nick Uranker, and stuff like. So I was running in those circles. I never trained with Rich, but I trained with all those other guys that also trained with Rich. So talking to them, it was like, well, how does he do things? And he's like, dude, he just like has all day to train. So he trains in the morning, does his strength work and breaks for 2 hours, and then does his rowing work and breaks for 2 hours, and then does his Olympic work and breaks for 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, so like, what? How do you put stuff together? And it's like, oh, well, and this is when I what I figured out, like all a CrossFit Metcon is, especially for competition, is learning how the movements play off of each other and strategizing your pacing for that. Because
Exactly.
if you go from a back squat into a box jump, like your legs are going to lock up if you go absolutely hard as fuck on the back squat. Like depending on what it is and what the weight is, like when you go to jump, your legs are going to lock. So you have to understand I have to go 80% here, and it's going to cost me some time because I know I'm going to make it up on the box jump. So all it is playing games with pacing. And then so you take those different components, put it together in a pace for a specific race that you probably have knowledge of prior to, or you understand how your body's going to react in the moment, so you don't go out like an idiot, and then it's usually fine. So yeah, it's a lot different than what people think.
And the pacing is the skill, essentially.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I remember when people would watch, I mean, I remember when Rich Froning was like first winning the CrossFit games, and the whole thing everybody kept saying was like, he looks like he's moving so slow, but he never stopped moving.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas other people would just like do all 30 box jumps, whatever, right in a row, and then they'd have to take 45 seconds to walk around to catch their breath.
Hmm.
So you just slow it down a little bit and do a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we were at the same time because I competed in the regionals in 2013
okay.
in SoCal with Keegan.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
same era.
I don't know if you noticed this, but like the biggest differentiator between like regionals and games to me was movement patterns. So I always had tight ankles, my hips, that was before my hip replacements, but like now I'm looking back, I'm like I had no internal hip rotation whatsoever. So I was always fighting an uphill battle and just like using capacity to just power through where I probably
Hmm.
shouldn't have. But I watched especially Froning, like his squat, his overhead squat, his muscle ups, his mechanics were just flawless. And it was like his joints just moved so well that that to me, it was like I can have the biggest engine in the world. I'll never move like that.
Yeah, and that's with any sport. So as something gets more popular, the cream is going to rise to the top because, like what was that? Every second counts. That CrossFit Games
Yeah.
documentary from
Yeah.
2008. You had like John Wellborn, who was like 300 pounds, and then like all these other dudes like Chris Spieler, like super tiny, all this contrast, and they were all kind of neck and neck. But then as the sport got more popular and more people came in, it's like obviously the people who had the work ethic, had the genetics, had the right training, like you ended up having to have all these factors in place to get to that top level.
Yeah.
Like with the NBA or something, like when that first started, you could be a fucking 5'9" NBA player. And now you're not going to be unless you're like 6'6" or something minimum, right? So that's just kind of how it goes. Like you have to have all those factors in place. Same thing with bodybuilding, same thing with any aspect of fitness. Like, dude, look, I'll never be a competitive bodybuilder, man. Like, I just don't have the genes for it. I have my limit that I can get to, and that's great. I'll maximize that. But I'm not going to lie to myself and say like I'm going to be, in the Olympia or something one day. There's other things that I'm good at.
Yeah. Well, and all of that aside, like you might never get to the 1%, but if you like it, you can still do it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you just have to understand, like, don't make it into something that where your expectations are so out of whack that it's like, listen, you're not going to be the next American Idol, man. Like it's you can still sing though, right? Go ahead and sing. Like you're just not going to be the next American Idol.
Yeah, a
So,
Chihuahua is never going to be a German Shepherd, man, no
right.
matter how hard they try.
Well, cool, man. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you are a busy dude and you got a ton of shit to do, but where can people find more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, mostly on my Instagram. It's just High Risk Fitness HQ. That's my username for everything. So YouTube, Instagram, High Risk Fitness HQ. That's where I'm at.
And I will say from a personal note, you've coached me, Keegan's coached me, and it was a phenomenal experience. I plan on doing it again. I love your guys' attitude, the way you do things, the methodology. Like it's pretty awesome. So
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, we like training you.
that was Randy Hill. Randy, as he mentioned, can be found at highriskfitnesshq.com and High Risk Fitness on all social media platforms. Additionally, make sure that you check out VersaBio.com for any and all of your peptide needs. BPC 157, GLP-3s, all on there, as well as a whole catalog of other stuff. And use launch 10 for 10% off. It was an honor having Randy in. Randy is an awesome dude. And thank you for listening to the Heroic Nation podcast.